They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hey, folks, welcome to the show. It is Monday. Thanks for starting the beginning of your week with us here, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. We have, we got a lot of stuff to talk to this show. I mean, it's just a lot of stuff's happened over the weekend, combined with the expulsion of State Representative Mickey Gates. We've got to talk about that. If you missed that, we've got that video right now. It's up at conduitnews.com. If you can watch the entire proceeding, it was about an hour long. Speaker of the House Matthew Shepard making his arguments for why State Representative Mickey Gates needs to be expelled. He essentially says that it's the law. It kept referencing the fact that they passed a law that said if you plead no contest to a felony, then you can't serve in the Arkansas House of Representatives. He also maintained that the Arkansas House of Representatives can expel a member at any time for any reason. He also made the argument that the law that they passed, a couple months ago, saying, listen, if you plead no contest to a felony, then you can't serve as a House member. He also made the argument with A plus B, if A equals B and B equals C, then anyway, he made a constitutional argument that the law does not conflict with the Arkansas Constitution. Anyway, and then on the other side, by the way, the vote was 88-4. I've got the vote right here in front of me. 88 yeas, 4 nays, and 7 non-voting. Your no votes were Mickey Gates, of course. Then you had State Representative McKenzie, Miller, and Payton voting no. Then you had non-voting members of State Representatives Bragg, Christensen, Cozart, Flowers, Murdoch, Rushing, and Walker. I think some of those people might not have been there. I don't remember. I think State Representative Christensen, I don't know if he was there that day because he might not have been there. I was watching. They sign in, they push the present button. Anyway, you guys can check out the full video. It's on the Conduit News YouTube page. The fastest way to get there is go to conduitnews.com though, because it's right there on the front page if you want to watch the Arkansas House vote. Hear what the arguments are. But this is what I have to say about it. Again, I certainly understand the Arkansas House's allergy to having somebody who's pled no contest, even if they have pled under a provision where there is no finding of guilt yet. Court has not found him guilty. I certainly can understand them, saying politically, we can't take this, and that's what this is. This is a political inconvenience for those who, just don't, you could say, to give the benefit of the doubt, above reproach, we don't even want the appearance of somebody like this serving in our ranks who may have done X, Y, and Z, and so we got to get rid of them. But if Mickey Gates is right, and what do I mean by that? Well, and he did talk a little bit about how he could stand up here and defend himself by essentially ratting out the Department of Finance and Administration and airing everything that they've done to him. If you go and listen to his speech, it seemed that Mickey Gates believes, and I think he does believe this, he's a victim in this whole process. And this is something that apparently was going on before he even ran for office the first time, and so you have a guy that maybe believes he's being treated fairly. He said it. Hey, did you hear him say that one of the people auditing him from the Department of Finance Administration asked for a job working asked to do his books asked for an accounting job, and it was the guy that was auditing him. That's weird, if true. And again, we don't know all of the facts, but I will just say this. History, because they talked a lot about history. Mickey Gates talked a lot about history because history was made. It was the first House member expelled in over 100 years. History might record that the real mechanism, the real catalyst, if you will, to expel Mickey Gates from the Arkansas House of Representatives wasn't the Arkansas House of Representatives. It was an unelected bureaucracy. I'm saying that's a possibility. It is a possibility that when everything is said and done, what the Arkansas House just did might, I don't know, it might be akin to what we're seeing and going on in Washington, D.C. right now. You know what I'm saying? What's going on in Washington, D.C. right now? Well, by the way, this is much more certain than what we don't really know how history will look at what happened on Friday with the Arkansas House. I'm pretty certain we know what's going on. You have these lifers in the government, right, that just don't like the policies of the president, so they are using everything in their power to try to stop him and remove him from office early, right? So we've got, essentially, they're trying to undo, well over 63 million Americans' votes of who they think they want to be, who they voted for. We want this guy to be president. And you've got the deep state that is allergic to this and essentially saying, we want to remove him early. We don't like what he's doing. What exactly is he doing? Well, I mean, he's starting to sniff around the CIA's operations in Ukraine. And that's essentially what this is. I was thinking about this over the weekend. That is essentially what's going on here, is that the CIA in the Democrat Party, they got real greedy in the Ukraine. And the president's trying to figure out what's going on in relation to the 2016 election and in relation to why the Democrats didn't want the FBI to look at their servers, CrowdStrike 2016. And, man, I'm telling you, what I can't believe in all of this is just how Teflon-like President Donald Trump is in all of this. I know it depends on what media outlet you use, what media outlet you look at, but I'm telling you, you follow some folks on Twitter, there's a completely different counter movement that is going on right now beneath the scenes in social media, and they are essentially combating, even from some conservative outlets like Fox or the Drudge Report, they're combating what is fake news and misinformation. What is this onslaught, this nonstop, we've got to get him, we got to take him down, we got to get rid of the president. Matter of fact, there is a fascinating article that I read over the weekend, and I don't have it pulled up because, honestly, I'm just now remembering it. But let's see, who wrote this? I was reading it last night. I saw this, but now I can't. Is it not signed by anybody? Anyway, it's a blog post. Forgive me, I don't see who wrote it. We're in a permanent coup. Americans might soon wish they just waited to vote their way out of the Trump era. It's fascinating. It compares what we're going through right now to what used to happen in the Soviet Union all the time, right? Anyway, before I get into this later in the program, I want to figure out who wrote it because this particular link doesn't have it. But anyway, it's fascinating. 870-275-9799. That's the telephone number if you want to contribute to the program. That's 870-275-9799. Here's my question. I'm going to ask this question probably all week. And I think you should too. I think if there's any reporters listening, they should ask this question of Governor Asa Hutchinson. Does Governor Asa Hutchinson support a free Hong Kong? Does Governor Asa Hutchinson support a free Hong Kong? Does he support what the Chinese government is trying to do in Hong Kong? Boy, the answer to that question could torpedo 6 Chinese deals pretty quick, right? I mean, come on. If the answer to that question, if Governor Hutchinson were to come out today and he were to say, I support a free Hong Kong, something tells me these Chinese deals would dry up pretty soon. What do you think? Look how the NBA's reacting. Did you guys see what Steve Kerr? A lot of people thought, hey, here's funny. Go to this Twitter video, Joe. It's Benny. A lot of people thought Steve Kerr, NBA coach of the Golden State Warriors, a lot of people thought Steve Kerr had back problems because he was such a good player in the NBA, played for the Chicago Bulls. Apparently, Steve Kerr, former NBA player, now coach of the Golden State Warriors, the reason he had so many back problems in the NBA is because he has no spine. Listen to this.
To continue our geopolitical discussion here, in all the years that you've gone to China and the teams have gone to China, has it ever come up that the NBA's business interests in China are at odds with a country whose human rights record is not in step with the United States?
It has not come up in terms of people asking me about it, people discussing it. No. Nor has our record of human rights abuses come up either. Things that our country needs to look at and resolve, that hasn't come up either. So none of us are perfect, and we all have different issues that we have to get to. And saying that is my right as an American. Doesn't mean that I hate my country. It means I want to address things, right? But people in China didn't ask me about, people owning AR-15s and mowing each other down in a mall. I wasn't asked that question. So we can play this game all we want and go all over the map, and, there's this issue and that issue, and the world is a complex place, and there's more gray than black and white.
What a sellout. What an absolute sellout that guy is. Okay, so really comparing your civil right, your God-given right to self-defense, self-preservation, I mean, it's just, it is inalienable. And in this country, it's, the Second Amendment, owning guns. He's comparing that to human rights abuses that China's going through right now with concentration camps. Labor camps. We got a lady we're going to listen to later in the show that's going to detail exactly what she went through, and the organ harvesting, the DNA testing they do, they store it, talking about this black market. It's actually not even black market. It's just an elite globalist. You can schedule your heart transplant if you go to China because they will murder someone and give you a fresh heart. Steve Kerr, man. Gosh. Now, honestly, when I saw this video, I thought to myself, oh, you talking about abortion. You want to compare America's human rights violations. Because that's the only thing you could say. That's in my opinion, maybe a few things with, casualties of war, civilians, maybe, because war's a dirty thing. But let's just stick with this. If you were going to compare human rights violations, the egregious human rights violations with China, the only real thing you could say is that America's killed 60 million babies, 60 million of our own people since 1974 through abortion. Okay. But we have a counter movement in this culture. We actually have freedom of speech. We have states that are passing laws that we've got there's very much a Christian movement that goes and loves on these women who are in these crisis pregnancies, and is by the, really by the grace of God. God is using these pregnancy help centers, and women are choosing life instead of death for their kids. Like we've really moved the needle on this. Arkansas specifically is now the number 2 pro-life state in the country. Okay, you can't do that in China. They'll just kill you, right? I mean, if there's a big social issue that you disagree with, they'll just put you in a labor camp, and then they'll sell your organs. And that's what's going on right now in Hong Kong. And these leftists, these NBA, I'm telling you right now, if you don't think that some of these corporations have just bought into the far left government social engineering schemes of Karl Marx, this is all you need to know. The NBA bends over backwards to stand up for transgender and the LGBT RSTLNE, would you like to buy Val community, when it comes to the North Carolina bathroom bill. Do you remember that, Joe? North Carolina had their bathroom bill, and the NBA freaked out. They had to get up on their pedestals and their social engineering high horses. And, gay people are just like it's just like the civil rights movement back in the 60s. And it's not. It's not even close to being the same. And, if you actually look at history, it should be wildly offensive to African Americans to be compared to this movement, with the LGBT. But, a lot of people don't, they don't stop and actually think about these things. The NBA, I mean, what about Colin Kaepernick? Oh my gosh, we want to use our platform for social justice. We want to use this. And we shouldn't be surprised by this. We know the left are hypocrites. It's the same left that the enemy of my enemy is my friend. They've been using this for a long time. Their enemy, of course, is conservatives. And so they say nothing about the Islamo-fascists and what they do to women. The feminists here just completely ignore that, right? Oh, we don't want to be Islamophobic, and we completely ignore how oppressive that culture is, while ignoring the great progress we've made when it comes to actual equality under the law in respect to men and women, under the law, and they just completely ignore it. I'm telling you, can we? I really wish the NBA could just forever shut up. And all of these athletes and all of these organizations just forever shut up about trying to be the moral arbiter ever again. Ever again. Likewise, you could say the same thing about people in our own state who are bending over backwards to bring the Communist Chinese Party here in the name of, their companies are going to create jobs. I kind of feel like Governor Asa Hutchinson really doesn't have any moral high ground on any other issue anymore either. It's because it just doesn't make any sense that we would continue to be pursuing these communist Chinese deals. And again, here's the question. Does Governor Asa Hutchinson support a free Hong Kong? Apparently, that's what started this whole NBA crisis that we were reading about and talking about all last week. That's why you have Steve Kerr saying, well, no, I wasn't asked about human rights abuses in China, just like I wasn't asked about American human rights abuse. It's not, there is no equivalency here. There is no equivalency because no country is perfect. That's correct. Yes, life is full of gray areas, but in this regard, we're talking about a system of government. At least our system of government, for the time being, purports to respect individual rights, freedoms, things like the freedom of speech. I mean, I'm telling you, some of these guys just need to read a book once in a while. You know what I mean? You just got to wonder what goes on. Why in the world, in a country that's regressive, that doesn't allow their citizens to have guns, speech, a right to property, privacy, all that stuff, we're looking in the face of as far as the government goes, the antithesis of what the United States of America stands for on paper. And Steve Kerr is like, we have the Second Amendment over here, and that's just terrible. That's human rights abuses. Are you kidding me? What a moron. Seriously. I mean, so this guy is honestly just completely ignorant. Like, the guy has no idea of what folks, if it's not for freedom, if it's not for freedoms like the freedom of speech, if it's not for freedom like you being able to protect your property and protect your life and protect your family with the Second Amendment, if it's not for economic freedom, first of all, if it's not for economic freedom, you really don't have any of these other freedoms either. You're not going to have money to waste on an NBA game to go watch a bunch of athletes do what you could never do because you'll have to be worried about feeding yourself and finding clean water. You know what I mean? Like, if it wasn't for economic freedom and voluntary cooperation among free men, we wouldn't have the comforts that we have, right? And same thing goes for these Hollywood actors. These Hollywood actors that think that because they're talented at saying what somebody else wrote for them in a convincing way, that means we also want to hear their opinions on geopolitics or domestic politics. It's like, no. I mean, you're not actually creating things that make the world go round and make the conveniences happen you're really not. As a matter of fact, we wouldn't have money to go waste on a movie if it wasn't for engineers and, and scientists and people building homes and construction. Like, you know what I mean? Like, they have just no concept of what makes our society where it is right now. I know I'm rabbit trailing here. We got to take a break. Don't go anywhere. 870-275-9799. We got a jam-packed show for you coming up here in a minute. We're talking about Gregory Wrightstone. He'll be back on the program. We're going to talk about the Vatican, what they are doing now, talking about ecological sins. It's crazy. Then next hour, State Representative Nelda Speaks will be with us. We're going to talk education contracts. Don't go anywhere. Back in a moment. We're going to go now to Congressman Rick Crawford. Been waiting for this interview all morning. It's always great to have him on Fridays. Congressman Rick Crawford, how are you this morning?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I don't envy you. What you guys are going through up there with Adam Schiff. You're on that committee. What can you tell us? What's your reaction with what's been going on the last couple of weeks?
Well, first off, just kind of bring it home a little bit. I was at my son's football game a week ago tonight. A week ago last night, rather. It was a week ago Thursday. And I've known these parents now for years, and our kids play football together and the whole nine. We've never really talked politics. They just come up and just, hey, how are things in Washington? That's been kind of the extent of it. And all four sides, I'm getting it from people in the bleachers that are going, how in the world do you put up with Adam Schiff? And it's like, 3 weeks ago, nobody even knew who Adam Schiff was. And now everybody does, and they all hate him. And
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty
I feel like
machine.
I'm shot out of a cannon.
Find out more
this morning.
at conduitnews.com.
Welcome, 870-275-9799. Wow. Yeah, real quick. One more thing on the NBA. This ex-North Carolina governor, pretty upset, right? Coming out slamming the NBA over the China controversy because they're forever hypocrites now. And they need to shut up. I mean, they really do. Former North Carolina Governor Pat McCrory didn't hold back when talking about the NBA's controversy with China on Tuesday and called Commissioner Adam Silver hypocritical in how he's handling it compared to how he handled HB2, or the bathroom bill, in the state in 2016. The NBA is currently on damage control after Houston Rockets general manager, blah, blah, blah. We know what he did. He had an innocent tweet. All he's trying to do is support a free Hong Kong. Again, does Asa Hutchinson support a free Hong Kong? Or, you could ask the question a different way. If there's anybody in the media that wants to stick a microphone to his face and let him answer the question, you could just be like, Governor, if you were to come out, if you were to come out and support a free Hong Kong, would that jeopardize the Chinese deals that we have? Would it? Telephone number 870-275-9799. Naturally, the bill sparked widespread outrage across the country. Remember the bathroom bill. North Carolina, the bathroom bill. By the way, that's something that here in Arkansas, in the leadership, they have not wanted. The leadership has not wanted to pursue a bathroom bill that's like, hey, you know what, boys, you go to the boys' room, and girls, you go to the girls' room. Remember when the gay marriage thing wasn't going to be a slippery slope? Remember that? It's going to be a slippery slope. Oh, you're crazy. I used to think they're crazy, too. When I was in college. Like, it's not going to be a slippery slope. Gender constructs. In the Louvre. That's a huge problem, the Louvre and the gender construct. The artificial gender construct surrounding how we relieve ourselves. It really needs to be more like that shower scene in the movie Starship Troopers. The NBA made a similar move, electing to move the 2017 All-Star Weekend from Charlotte. It awarded the city the event last season after the bill was rescinded. They put political pressure on the sovereign state of North Carolina, economic pressure, and now China is putting that same concept. They're putting economic pressure on the NBA. In the NBA, you know what would be a good meme, Joe? Like putting the NBA logo out there, but instead what is the guy it's a famous basketball player that's in the NBA logo, the red, white, and blue NBA logo, replacing it with like Winnie the Pooh. Like the NBA, Winnie the Pooh. And see how Mao likes that. I mean, I'm sorry, not Mao. What am I thinking? Jinping. See how he likes that. We got to take a break. Back in a moment.
So the idea that somehow he's elevating himself to some, national prominence, that's a gross miscalculation on his part. But what's driving this disdain for him is the fact that he's just not being honest about anything. And so the more we see about this whistleblower complaint, the more you dissect it and the more information that comes out, the more you see this is a contrived plot against the president. And now it's being reported, multiple sources are reporting this, that the whistleblower is in fact an associate of Joe Biden. And so the question then is, we already know that Adam Schiff knew who the whistleblower was well in advance. He knew about the complaint well in advance before sharing it with us on the committee. And so we have to assume that he knew that he was associated with Joe Biden. In fact, the ICIG indicated in his comments in his hearing that, in fact, he was a Democrat and identified as a Democrat and recognized that there was a potential for bias. But he didn't specify any association with a particular candidate, but there was the projection at one point that this individual was associated with a 2020 candidate. Well, the 2020 candidate in question turns out to be Joe Biden himself. So you see where we're going with this. I mean, again, this is a Steele dossier all over again. So what happens is these guys, they cook up a plan. They leak it to the media. They tell the media about it. The media runs a story, and then they cite the media story as the reason for their action. So we're seeing that all over again, and they think the American people are too stupid to figure out this playbook.
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned it's the Steele dossier. Some people have said this is the, the CIA, a rogue CIA, doing what the rogue FBI couldn't do with Trump-Russia collusion. And now we do have one report saying that this CIA whistleblower, quote, whistleblower, was even on the plane on Air Force Two when Joe Biden was in the Ukraine. I mean, so this could be a lot more than, there may be some personal consequences for this guy when we actually look into, what actually happened in Ukraine. And let me ask you this, Congressman Rick Crawford, were you kind of maybe not shocked, but in that transcript of that call, the media misconstrued, the favor was to investigate Joe Biden. They omit 540 words in order to get to that conclusion. He was actually asking about Ukrainian corruption along with the CrowdStrike server and the hacking of the DNC. And for some reason, the media doesn't want people to know that that's what the president was asking about. What are your thoughts on that?
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back. We're having a little bit of a technical difficulty with our phone line right now. We're getting it worked out. So stay tuned. We're trying to raise Gregory Wrightstone, a geologist. We got a little climate change we need to talk about. Just a little something. Anyway, and that might fix it right there. But we'll see. We have a backup plan. Sometimes our phone lines have this weird echo thing that happens, and it's extremely frustrating. I did find this article that I was referencing a second ago. Matt Taibbi, quote, "We're in a permanent coup," is this is crazy, but listen to this. Americans might soon wish they just waited to vote their way out of the Trump era. I've lived through a few coups. They're insane, random, and terrifying. Like watching sports, except your political future depends on it. Hang on one second, Joe. Let me. It's that right there. So, I've lived through a few coups. Okay, listen to this. The kickoff begins when a key official decides to buck the executive. Now, we have experienced that right now. From that moment, government becomes a high-speed a high-speed head-counting exercise. Who's got the power plant, the airport, the police, and the Capitol? How many department chiefs are answering their phones? Who's writing tonight's newscast? When the KGB in 1991 tried to reassume control of the crumbling Soviet Union by placing Mikhail Gorbachev under arrest and attempting to seize Moscow, logistics ruled. Boris Yeltsin's crew drove to the Russian White House in ordinary cars, beating KGB coup plotters who were trying to reach the seat of Russian government in armored vehicles. Listen to this. A key moment came when Yeltsin's men, Alexander Rutsky, who 2 years later would himself lead a coup against Yeltsin, prevailed upon a major in a tank unit to defy KGB orders and turn on the criminals. We have long been spared this madness in America. Our head counting ceremony was Election Day. We did it once every 4 years. That's all over in the Trump era. On Thursday, news broke that two businessmen said to have peddled supposedly explosive information about corruption involving Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden were arrested at Dulles Airport on campaign finance violations. The two figures are allegedly to be bagmen bearing dirt on Democrats solicited by Trump and his personal lawyer Rudy Giuliani. Lev Parnas and Igor Fruman will be asked to give depositions to impeachment investigators. They're reportedly going to refuse. Their lawyer, John Dowd, also says they will refuse to appear before House committees investigating President Donald Trump. Fruman and Parnas, meanwhile, claim they had real derogatory information about Biden and other politicians. But the U.S. government had shown little interest in receiving it through official channels. For Americans not familiar with the language of the Third World, that's two contrasting denials of political legitimacy. This is what we're facing right now. The men who are the proxies for Donald Trump and Rudy Giuliani in this story are asserting that official channels have been corrupted. The forces backing impeachment, meanwhile, are telling us those same defendants are obstructing a lawful impeachment inquiry. This latest incident, set against the impeachment mania and the reportedly expanding Russiagate investigation of U.S. Attorney John Durham, accelerates our timeline to chaos. We are speeding toward a situation when someone in one of these camps refuses to obey a major decree, arrest order, or court decision, at which points Americans will get to experience the joys of their political futures being decided by phone calls to generals and police chiefs. Again, Matt Taibbi goes on, my discomfort in the last few years, first with Russiagate and now with Ukrainegate and impeachment, stems from the belief that the people pushing hardest for Trump's early removal are more dangerous than Trump. Many Americans don't see this because they're not used to waking up in a country where you're not sure who the president will be by nightfall. They don't understand that this predicament is worse than having a bad president. The Trump presidency is the first to reveal a full-blown schism between the intelligence community and the White House. Senior figures in the CIA, NSA, FBI, and other agencies made an open break from their would-be boss before Trump's inauguration, commencing a public war of leaks that has not stopped. Wow. That's crazy. I had never actually thought of it that way. You know? Obviously, I believe in President Trump's policies. I believe in what he's doing. A lot of people, I even get sick of this. A lot of times, people who say I agree with President Trump, they almost always have to put a caveat in there now to, appease their moderate friends. I may not agree with how he tweets. I may not agree with, what he's doing. And I'm kind of done with that. I'm just like, man, I like the fact that he can be so brash because he's just being who he is, which, our interview last week that we did with Mr. Giles, who said, honestly, if you were to put a camera on all of us and follow us around 24 hours, none of us are worthy. Not to mention if you were able to read our thoughts and everything else. And so we've had, and I keep talking about this, and I'm not able to really I'm not able to describe it. I don't think I think I do a terrible job at it, actually. But at some point, I mean, we can all sit here and say that America, that used to be the idea, right? The decency of America. America is good. America is decent. And certainly we've seen a moral decay. So we can go back and we can point to how things were. We can go back and look at our founding fathers' quotes when they say, you know, America and the freedoms we have were meant for a moral people, a moral and decent people. And you're only going to get that how do you even know of morality at all? The only way we know of morality is by God's standard, and that's revealed in His Word. That's revealed in the Bible. The character of God is what gives us that concept of right and wrong. You know, the idea of perfection is what, and you derive that, and yet I feel like for decades now, this idea of decency has been used to deceive millions of Americans, while in the shadows, we are debauched. You know, in public, our politicians tell us one thing. They have this costume on, but I just don't think President Trump plays that game. I mean, not that he's not human, but you get my point, right? Because now they're all saying, well, you know, Bush was decent, Obama was decent, but there's just something about Trump, and he's not decent. And you get all these virtue signalers. How am I supposed to tell my children to not cuss when the President of the United States cusses in public? 870-275-9799 is the telephone number. Apparently, our phone. What's going on with the phone lines, Joe? The phone. No, you can just tell me. The phone line's messed up. Yeah. Okay, so we're trying to fix our phone line, and that's what's going on right now. We've got a phone line issue, and so that's why maybe we'll get to Gregory Wrightstone later in the week. We can do that. That's fine. Because I really want to talk to him. This is what I want to talk to him about. The Vatican. Okay. Listen to this. Thomas Williams from Breitbart, Rome. Participants in the Vatican how do you say that, Joe? Synod on the Amazon region proposed adding sins against the environment to lists of traditionally recognized sins in their second day of discussions and deliberations. Synod fathers called for an ecological conversion that would allow people to see the gravity of sins against the environment as sins against God, against our neighbor, and against future generations, Vatican News reported. This would imply a need to produce and spread more widely a theological literature that would include ecological sins alongside traditional sins. Can you just see that? Can you see it going into a priest? And I mean, I'm not Catholic, I'm Protestant, so. Is she going into a priest for synod? Not synod. Synod, sorry. Can you see going into a priest and being like, I didn't recycle my number 5 plastics like I should have, or whatever the designation. Yeah, I mean, I used a plastic straw yesterday. How many Hail Marys do I have to say? Ecological sins, really? I mean, you know, if you're the evil baron that's like dumping toxins into the river, like, okay, yeah, you're clearly doing something that's wrong and sinful, right? But ecological sins, man. So here's my take. If socialism doesn't work on everybody to control you, you know, to do this Gaia worship. It's really ironic because really what we're doing is worshiping the created or the creature rather than the creator. But you know, if that's not enough, we'll just go to full-blown religion and we'll get people to embrace socialism from the more traditional means, is what it seems like to me. In order to be ever more synodal, the church must listen, quote, to the peoples and to the earth by coming into contact with the abundant reality of an Amazon full of life and wisdom, but also of contrasts. Listen to the peoples and to the earth. Interesting. How do you listen to the earth? What is that? How does that? Listen to the earth. Is that like Pocahontas? In the not Elizabeth Warren, but the Disney movie. I guess did you ever hear a wolf cry to the? Yeah, I know. That's now a thing you have to clarify. Yeah, on a political talk show. In order to be ever more it continues with the cry that is provoked by destructive deforestation and extractivist activities, and that demands an integral ecological conversion, it says. Woo, man. You can understand why I wanted to talk to Gregory Wrightstone on this one, right? I mean, this is just getting to the point where it's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. We're going to take a break. We're going to reset. Don't go anywhere. We got a great show for you. We'll be talking with State Representative Nelda Speaks, assuming we get our phones worked out. We should be able to get those worked out in time. I'm fully confident of it. Also, James O'Keefe, Project Veritas. At noon today, there is a CNN. Apparently, that's the new whistleblower. CNN's all about whistleblowers. Are they going to be about this one? There's a person been wearing a hidden camera in CNN. Apparently, it is an explosive video. James O'Keefe dropped it this week, or dropped the hints. The actual first video comes out at 12 o'clock at projectveritas.com today. And Twitter's already censoring it. We'll tell you that next. Much, much more as well. Don't go anywhere. Folks, as a taxpayer or business owner, I know the government rarely gives the people a break. Big government politicians seem to always want more money from us, taxpayers. So if you want to support the work that we're doing here at Conduit News, bringing you the truth, then why not consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business and limited government. Just go to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Support Our Cause. From there, you can decide if you want to donate monthly or one time. Give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow and grow less, and give the people fighting for your values more. Go to conduitforcommerce.org right now.
To the 2016 election. If we've sat back now for the last 3 years and said there were some shenanigans in the 2016 election, and it's the president's responsibility to get to the bottom of it. So he asked about the 2016 election, and then they throw a fit about it. How dare you interfere with an election? Look, he's not interfering. He's doing what you asked him to do, and that is to find out what happened in the 2016 election so we can prevent it from happening again. There was no mention of the 2020 election. There was no mention of dirt. The mention of dirt came in the parody presentation that Adam Schiff made in the opening comments of the hearing with acting DNI Joe McGuire. When he made those comments in parody, we were flabbergasted by this, by the way. I mean, how in the world can you come and say these things and, put all kinds of subtext in there?
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody.
Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for being with us today. Coming up at the top of the next hour, I'm going to talk about this story that was in the Gazette the other day, the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Changes in contract lead to DHS firing. It's another deal related to Medicaid money going to a nonprofit, which is something that we've heard of before. And it raised a lot of red flags with me. I mean, I know you've got somebody that you fired. It has to do with a contract that was approved, from what I can tell, by the legislative body, and then they kind of made a supplemental contract for more money. And anyway, Andy Davis has got the story. We'll give you a little bit more detail coming up at 7:05. Also going to talk about more about China, because I want you to hear something that I could not believe. So we'll talk about that. There is a lawyer, and this lawyer who's been indicted, this Arizona, Utah, Arkansas lawyer, had an office in Fayetteville. Again, you heard this story last week. It was the strangest story I've heard in a long time, that 9 out of 10 adoptions done in Washington and Benton counties are children from the Marshall Islands, where we have this guy who had this scheme who was enticing pregnant women to come to America so that they would then give their babies up for adoption. They're paying these women. U.S. attorney saying this is the clear-cut case of human trafficking. So we have this lawyer here accused of human trafficking, keeping these women, some of them, one of them apparently that's here now, there's like 13 women here now that were supposed to get paid for their babies. And, of course, now the scheme is up and the jig is up, and so now there's chaos. I mean, it's being described as chaos. The judge saying that creativity is needed. Joshua Bryant of Rogers, he's the one that's saying it's absolute chaos because he is representing 13 couples who've already signed contracts to adopt these kids. Martin agreed and ordered his court to oversee all of the cases in Arkansas that involved recently indicted adoption attorney Paul D. Peterson. Of course, the parents are saying they had no idea. They're maintaining that they had no idea that this lawyer was doing things that were illegal in order to get these kids. This is very much an emergency moment. We're going to get creative. At least 19 pregnant women, Peterson, 44, brought to Arkansas from the Marshall Islands, are still in the state. 19, I said 13, but that's changed. There's one in DeQueen that has no prenatal care at all, according to testimony. So, I mean, what exactly is going to happen here? There's allegations that some of these women were enticed, that they didn't actually know all of their rights, that they signed over their kids under false pretenses. The argument is also not just false pretenses, but potentially illegal pretenses. So, again, the judge, or the attorney Bryant told the judge these were problems that they were allowed to grow in the dark. They should be fixed in the light. Because we've got, apparently, people who are in the adoption community who okay adoptions in Washington and Benton counties. They've known this was a weird thing for a long time. That there's something going on here where you got this guy making, in charge of all these adoptions of Marshallese children. So now, once again, Dwayne Dak Keys on Wednesday, when this story broke, said that none of the adoptive parents waiting for children or whose adoptions were completed are under investigation, which is understandable. At the same time, though, shouldn't we send somebody to check on these kids? I mean, you know me, I'm not one of these guys for government overreach. I'm just saying, I think we should at least follow up with all these children. Just follow up. Just make sure everything's up and up, right? No? I mean, what? I'm not saying you send Child Protective Service in there and harass them. I said, can we put eyes on some of these kids? Can we see them, know that they exist? I just feel like that would be doing our due diligence, Well, the reason is, is because if this kind of operation is going on, and it is human trafficking tends to attract certain clientele, right? I'm not saying that these parents. I'm saying, you understand what I'm saying? You're just going to attract. If this kind of thing was going on, I mean, you have a guy on the ground that the Marshall Islands government is arrested that was facilitating this. I guess finding the women that wanted to give their children up. Just a thought. Another 8 pregnant women, by the way, were found in the home that Peterson owns in Mesa, Arizona. So they did a search warrant. They found 8 other pregnant women. Mesa, whatever. Mesa. I'm not from Arizona. We also have Utah's Attorney General filed another 11 criminal counts against Peterson, including human smuggling, sale of a child, and communications fraud. So this guy is, he's a pretty bad dude. We'll see what happens with it. James O'Keefe. Can you believe this? He's back again. He has listen to this. On the eve of the CNN insider blowing the whistle on his own network. That was a couple of nights ago. He's going to get released today at noon. James O'Keefe quoting Samuel Adams. Now listen to this, Arkansas, because I think we can take a hint from what Samuel Adams can travel halfway around the world and not find a beer better than Samuel Adams. Now listen to what Sam Adams says here. Quote, "It does not take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority, keen to set brush fires of freedom in the minds of men." That's a really good quote. Doesn't take a majority to prevail. It takes an irate, tireless minority. Are there any of you guys in Arkansas right now where that quote really resonates? It just takes a tireless, meaning you don't get tired, small group of people to talk to your fellow citizens, to talk to your friends, your neighbors, your church members, everybody in your sphere of influence. Talk about the benefits of freedom and how when government grows, our liberty retracts, actually decreases. Let me know what you think. 870-275-9799. I mean, what exactly did Samuel Adams mean by that, if you disagree with what I just said? It doesn't take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority keen to set brush fires of freedom in the minds of men. Let me know what you think. We got one more hour coming your way next. State Representative Nelda speaks as well at 7:33. Back in a minute.
Broadcasting from the Baker Implement Studios. Baker Implement, serving you with 11 convenient locations. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 a.m. KBTM, Jonesboro.
That as fact, and then after the fact, go, oh, well, I was just kidding. No way, no court proceeding in the world would you see that stand. And so that's the difference between a legal proceeding and what you see going on in Congress. And that is, these guys, first off, the witness is sworn, but the members of Congress are not. That's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to present evidence, you should be sworn. He was attempting to present evidence, and he wasn't sworn, so therefore he wasn't bound to tell the truth. Of course, he's not bound to tell the truth anyway because he's Adam Schiff. He lies every time he opens his mouth.
Yeah.
And so, on the one hand, I don't guess we should be all that surprised about it. On the other hand, it's absolute outrage that he's using his position to try and affect the public opinion. And that's what this was about. That's the reason that the hearing was held in public. A hearing of that nature should never be held in public. So he held that hearing in public exactly for the reason to give him a platform to do this parody, and then afterward pronounce this disclaimer of, well, I was just kidding, so it's not, just relax.
Yeah.
That's entirely unacceptable. So here's the other thing people need to understand, too, about the phone call in question. First, a few things. First off, the president is not a member of the intelligence community. Further, he wasn't engaged in any type of intelligence activity. So that means that the complainant in question had no jurisdiction or no standing to offer a complaint with regard to intelligence, because this was not an intelligence operation, number one. Number two, the president's not a member of the intelligence community. Therefore, a member of the intelligence community would not file a complaint of urgent concern in the intelligence community to address something that he or she believed was a problem when it's completely out of order. I mean, how hard is this to figure out? We're not talking about, this was not a CIA operation, number one. Number two, the president is not a member of the IC. So why is this guy given standing at all?
Yeah.
And so on the front end, you've got to take this stuff serious, and you've got to say, well, look, follow the procedure. And then we find out that the procedure is flawed, and that the ICIG might have even played a role in a flawed procedure by altering the form associated with the disclosure of urgent concern. And so the more you look into this, on the front end, acting DNI Joseph McGuire said we had every reason to think this was credible because it followed the procedure. Then he goes on to say, I took the advice of DOJ counsel, who advised me that this was not an IC matter. Therefore, the ICIG had no jurisdiction. Therefore, it was not incumbent on the acting director of national intelligence to provide that report, to disclose it to the committee.
And that's why they were so. And I just want to say that's why the Democrats were so hard on him, because we now know Adam Schiff, knew who the whistleblower was and was expecting this to have already been cycled into the media narrative, and it wasn't.
Right. I'm going to tell you just touched on something too. So Adam Schiff, he's orchestrating this whole thing, and one of two things is going on. Either he is not only being deceitful and let's just be honest with it, flat out lying to the Republicans on the House Intelligence Committee, but he's also lying to his colleagues on the Democrat side. So he's either lying to them as well, or they are complicit, or he's telling them everything he's doing and they're complicit. In either case, we've got a problem. One is they're complicit and they're allowing it to go on and not say anything. Or two, they didn't know, but they do now, and they're still not saying anything.
Yeah.
In either case, that's a problem for I would not want to be one of those Democrats who either A, knows about it in advance, has been advised of what Schiff's plan is, and is aware of everything that the committee or staff are doing, and says nothing, or two, after the fact, now it's clear, and yet they're remaining silent. In either case, that's a pretty bad position for them to be in.
It is, and
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
good morning, Arkansas. Thanks so much for being with us. My name is Paul. You know who I am. This is Conduit News. And this is the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Sorry. Joe got a kick out of that intro. It was like, that's too lackadaisical, Paul. You need to step it up a little bit. Hey, listen. We've had a good first hour. If you missed it, you should check it out. We talked a little bit about, we're going to talk more about China here in a minute, but we talked about the NBA, what Steve Kerr said, and we talked about, well, I mean, I'm going to ask it again. We'll just start the hour this way. Does Governor Asa Hutchinson support a free Hong Kong? Now, you may think, Paul, what are you doing? You can't, why don't you leave the governor alone? Okay, I understand why you'd say that. That's fine. But how come I'm the only one that continues to bring up the fact that we have 6 communist Chinese, quote, deals where we're supposed to bring in these, quote, companies, and we got what's going on in Hong Kong, we got what's going on with the NBA. Is there not one reporter who's curious? Here's the other question. If the governor were to come out and support a free Hong Kong, would that then for sure kill the communist Chinese deals? Because, I mean, we know what's going on with the NBA. China uses their economic power, i.e. our own money, against us. And there is something to be said about that, by the way. The conventional wisdom was that we will make China more free by allowing them to participate in our capitalist society, our capitalist global economy. Let's allow the Chinese in. Let's let them get a little money and they've got. They're not a developing nation. I mean, they are a developed country, but they are totalitarian. They have a terrible government, terrible human rights abuses. The idea was, they'll become more like us if we allow them into our economic system. Not a political system, but an economic system of capitalism. And what do you know? We're becoming more like them than they are like us. Just go listen to these people, right? I mean, it's hilarious if you think about them using capitalism to get us to embrace totalitarianism and communism. Think about that for a second. Is that not weird anybody out? That's got to weird some people out here in Arkansas. Come on, are there any politicians out there who think that's a little strange, that that's a little odd? None that care. I mean, think about that. It's like, you know how the Islamo-fascists will use our First Amendment religious freedom, to promote a system of theocracy that is incompatible with the Constitution of the United States. But if you try to say, hey, I think you're trying to implement a political agenda, not a religion, they say, no, freedom of religion, First Amendment right. That happens sometimes. Sharia law not, that's the political system. Sharia law is not compatible with the Constitution, right? It's kind of like that, except that the communists have taken our they said, okay, we'll participate in your system of capitalism, and then we will use our economic might to get you to embrace communism. And we thought the opposite was going to happen. We thought that the communists would become more free, they'd give their people more rights because they would see that they've got a little money. But no, they've done the complete opposite. And now they're making American companies more like them. It's the complete opposite of what should be happening. They're making the state of Arkansas more like China instead of China more like the great state of Arkansas. It's really, really sad when you think about it. It's an embarrassment if you think about it. More on that in a second. I'm so excited for 12 o'clock today because Project Veritas will be releasing their video. They've got a CNN insider now. CNN insider's been still recording as of like a couple of days ago. They don't know who it is. They'll figure it out as soon as this tape drops. They've got a CNN insider who's been recording higher-ups in CNN for a long time. Project Veritas is back, and we have... Go to this Twitter video, Joe. It is the James O'Keefe Twitter video. So he announced this on Friday or Saturday, and it was absolutely taken off on Twitter, the hashtag #ExposeCNN, and CNN is already censoring it. I want you to listen to James O'Keefe here, because this is something that you need to be aware of.
From D.C., from the Value Voters Summit. I got to show you something Eric on our media team showed me. This is absolutely hilarious. If you go to Twitter right now, first of all, we were trending #1 last night in the United States, 152,000 tweets about this exposed CNN. People are still talking about exposing CNN, excited about the release. 152,000 tweets. But if you go to Twitter and you type in the word expose right now, you get expose Fox News, expose James O'Keefe. So we looked in to see how many people are actually tweeting about expose James O'Keefe. 66 tweets, 6 tweets per minute versus 200,000 tweets, 670 tweets per minute. I just want to say this is hilarious, Jim, that we have a video coming tomorrow, and they're already doing damage control. I mean, what are they going to do? What are they going to do when this thing drops? I don't even know if they're going to be able to stop it. Well, our production team is busy right now finishing the piece. We have the insiders still working for the network, actually. So we actually just got some more content today for some high-level people. This is going to be big, but I am actually laughing right now at Jack Dorsey. I think this is hilarious. This guy's got to get his shop under control. We got engineers in San Francisco trying to stop this thing. They're not going to be able to stop it.
All right, there it is. So it's coming out. The video is going to be coming out today at noon. That's pretty great. Once again, there are those people. There are some people on the left that just completely ignore the idea that Twitter censors conservatism and censors conservatives. But I mean, you have it in real time right there. They can't stand it. They're out to protect CNN, which is essentially propaganda. And we face this here, I think, all levels. You have your established media, and you have your alternative media. And what's funny, though, is I remember when John Stossel worked for ABC News, and he used to do the same stuff that James O'Keefe is doing now. And that's what used to be considered journalism. But you're gonna hear people all week say that James O'Keefe is a partisan hack. And the reality is he's actually doing investigative work that the media used to do before they just became, listen to this. This is from James O'Keefe. He wrote this. It's up at his website. The media has become an industrial system of production that manufactures consent. This is true whether said by Noam Chomsky, James O'Keefe, or Glenn Greenwald. Political implications aside, the media has become an organ of propaganda that is only about commercialism, clicks, ratings, power and influence, and political advocacy. All the while the press evades scrutiny by appealing to the rights afforded by the First Amendment. Well, that's kind of what I just said, but on the religious side with radical Islam. And then, anyway, while adhering to none of the accompanying duties, meaning they've got the First Amendment, but they're not actually responsible with it. Big tech and big media corporations, even right here in our own state, folks, have more power than the branches of government. Nationally, certainly, big tech and big media corporations have more power than all three branches of government federally. But who holds them accountable? Who watches the watchmen? And why is it so important somebody holds them to account? Because doing their jobs is required in a democracy. The public's right to know make all other rights in our society possible, because our government exists with the consent of the governed, and this consent must be informed. People will make their own decisions when they are properly informed. Real journalism shouldn't only be discourse, moral judgments, and conclusions. It shouldn't have to engage in relentless speculation, punditry, and stenography opining to the masses. It should not abuse participation in advocacy work for anonymous leakers where sources in government get to set the agenda. Investigative reporters, the real ones, have the duty to go beyond what somebody wants us to publish. What journalists ought to do is simply engage in the empirical method to a degree so real that the resulting truths transfix and anestheticize. When people are able to see what is happening, it becomes more real. We show that transgressions are, in fact, transgressions. The way to achieve proper reforms is to capture reality. Precisely capture reality. Anyway, I'm very excited. I don't know about you guys. This is kind of like Christmas coming in October to see what this tape has to reveal about what's really been going on behind the scenes at CNN. It's going to be nuts. When it comes out, you guys need to share it on social media. Folks, there's been changes in a contract that led to the firing of a DHS official here in the state of Arkansas. Andy Davis had this story. I read it the other day, and I have to say, this has to do with Medicaid dollars, your taxpayer dollars, going to another nonprofit, a nonprofit that's supposed to deliver services. Now, what I get right off the bat here is that Cindy Gillespie, the secretary of the Department of Health, or what are they calling this now under the reorganization? Anyway, she's the head of Medicaid. DHS. She's the head of DHS. So Secretary Gillespie didn't have anything to do with this. Okay, that's what's established clear in the article. She had nothing to do with this discrepancy. Now there's the Office of Inspector General here in Arkansas that's looking into what happened with this contract. Okay, it's a nonprofit that provides a variety of services for the state Medicaid program. They were supposed to be paid $7.5 million from January 1st of this year through January 30th of next year. But we have somebody who was terminated, was fired. Her name is Tammy Harlan. She's the former director of the department's Division of Medical Services. Back in August, they have faulted her with handling a contract with the Arkansas Foundation for Medical Care. That's the nonprofit. And the contract pays the foundation to approve and review procedures and other services performed by health care providers. Okay, so this is kind of a, I don't know, the gatekeepers to make, what is it? You spend $7.5 million to make sure. I wonder if you spend $7.5 million, do you save more than you spend in that regard? If they're trying to approve procedures, just a thought. We also have somebody else who was suspended without pay, a Margaret Newton, 10 days as a result of the inquiry. Now, we have Margaret Newton declining to comment on that. It has to do with a separate contract or a supplemental contract, which they are very clear Cindy Gillespie didn't sign. She signed the original one that appeared to have been actually vetted by people who have oversight, legislators. The attorney with the department, David Sterling, says the State Office of Medicaid Inspector General is conducting a follow-up investigation because they have been requested and urged to by Governor Asa Hutchinson, which is a good thing. Currently, that investigation is ongoing, and DHS is cooperating fully with the Office of Inspector General. Again, another quote from Sterling. They're saying that the supplemental contract that was agreed to between some, member of DHS and this nonprofit is basically null and void, doesn't have any effect. Medicaid Inspector General Elizabeth Smith declined to comment on her investigation. Asa Hutchinson said that the fact that this investigation is going on is a good thing, and he credited his transformation of state government. Quote, "This is an example of how transformation is useful in managing state government. The creation of the Office of Inspector General allows for an independent review when questions come up about contracts and how they're handled." I mean, this is more of a question, I would say. They've already fired somebody. Okay, they fired somebody. Again, her name is Tammy Harlan. She's a 61-year-old Navy veteran, and she worked for the Department of Human Services for more than 30 years. Now, 6 months ago, she was making $121,000, but then she was reassigned to another position where she took a cut in pay, and then she was making $97,000 a year. Here's what the Gazette says. Her firing came, the Democrat Gazette, her firing came about 6 months after she was reassigned to be an assistant director over the Adult Protective Services Unit within the Department of Division of Aging, Adult, and Behavioral Health Services. As a result, her salary dropped from $121,559 to $97,247. When the change was announced in late January, the Human Services Department said the new job was a better fit for Harlan's skills. Interesting. So, they put a new person in there. Okay? And when they put a new person in her position, that's when they started, according to this report, they discovered some irregularities with the state of Arkansas's dealings with the Arkansas Foundation for Medical Care, the nonprofit. So you see where this is going. Something is, we'll get to the bottom of this, but they've got emails. Do they have emails or texts? But apparently, after, this all was approved, the legislature signed off on it. They tried to make changes to a contract, and then they went ahead and, that's kind of what happened. They went ahead and tried to execute a contract. It was for more money, and somebody lost their job as a result of it. So now we have an Inspector General's investigation into some Medicaid money going to a nonprofit company. I feel like we've been here before, folks. What do you think? We're going to take a break, going to reset. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, we're going to be talking with State Representative Nelda Speaks, and we'll be back here in just a moment. I see a headline where one of these whistleblowers now wants to testify, but only in writing. And I'm just thinking, well, that's just going to be another document that the media can distort and one-sided, and probably run the written testimony past Adam Schiff before you guys see it.
Well, let's be honest about it. The whistleblower complaint was not like any other whistleblower complaint that we know of in the past, and the behavior of the complainant does not comport with the usual whistleblower. And the other thing is that this was basically like a legal document. I don't know if you read the complaint. It's out there in the public sphere. You can see it for yourself. I read the complaint, and not only did the complaint, it was prepared like a legal document with footnotes. Who does that except a lawyer? So that means that he had to have had legal counsel help prepare that document. Who was that legal counsel? I wonder. So and I'm not making any kind of conjecture here, but just so everybody knows,
exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, welcome back. The break run for 1 minute. Now we're back, and I want to tell you about this. This is an older video. I think this video broke back the summer, so back in June of this year. There's a Chinese labor camp survivor, and she's speaking out against socialism because it's socialism, and she's lived it, and it's terrifying. Her name's Jennifer Zhang, a China labor camp survivor. And I want you to listen. And the whole time, when you listen to this, I want you to keep in mind that the leaders of Arkansas's economic development, their philosophy is to not just do business with the Chinese, but bring their companies to Arkansas. 6 of them. Listen to this survivor.
The poor person who was a match could be killed on demand so that his or her organs could be sold. I never wanted to live in any sort of socialism again. But here in the US, I'm starting to feel that it has followed me. Not only many politicians are making socialism sound so sweet, but the majority of young Americans are attracted by it. But here is what it really is. In Communist China, the government, or rather the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, controls everything. And because it controls everything, it can make all the rules, it can take away people's liberty, property, and dignity, and persecute them at will. So ever since the CCP took power 70 years ago, more than half of the population has been persecuted one way or the other. Over 8 million people died of unnatural deaths. My family and I suffered too. I was thrown into prison 4 times and then sent to a labor camp for simply practicing Falun Gong, which is only a mind, body, spirit practice to improve mental and physical health. The labor camp felt like entering right into hell. From the very first moment we were in, we were forced to squat like this, with our hands putting behind our heads, our heads lowered, and our eyes looking at our feet motionlessly, squatting like this under the baking sun for 15 hours. Whenever someone couldn't endure or fainted, electric batons were immediately used on them so that they would be revived to continue with the squatting. On the second day in the camp, 2 police guards dragged me from the cell into the courtyard, threw me onto the ground, applied 2 electric batons on me all over the body until I lost consciousness.
You sound like good business partners. We should do business with these people.
Every day was a struggle between life and death. We were not only under endless torture, physical and mental, but were also forced to do endless slave hard labor.
What if we can get them to move to Arkansas?
All the
these people?
products we made in the camp were exported to overseas countries, including the United States. And we were also subjected to physical examinations and blood tests.
I wonder if they want to make a biotech plant in Arkadelphia. That sounds like a good idea to me.
The data of our blood and tissue types were stored in the computer system. So when someone in any part of the world needed an organ, the poor person who was a match could be killed on demand so that his or her organs could be sold for organ transplantations. This is not a plot in a horror novel or Hollywood movie, but a real and heinous crime perpetrated against innocent people. During the past 20 years, when Falun Gong was persecuted in China, the number of people killed for their organs could be in millions. These, ladies and gentlemen, are the realities of socialism. Socialists promise heaven on earth, but always end up giving you a one-way ticket to hell.
Stop. Yeah, that's a survivor of a Chinese labor camp. And we want want to do business with the Communist Chinese Party, and we want to bring these entities to Arkansas with the hopes that they'll create jobs. Just ignore all of that, though, right? Ignore all of that. You know what? I feel like Arkansas was doing what the NBA was doing before we found out about the NBA, right? We did it first. Back in just a moment.
The thing Adam Schiff did when he assumed the chairmanship of the Intelligence Committee is staff up with a ton of lawyers. So the HIPSI staff, the House Intelligence Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, or HIPSI as we call it, the HIPSI staff on the Dem side is mostly populated with attorneys. We're dealing with oversight of the intelligence community, and they are populated primarily with attorneys, some coming from an NSC background, others with absolutely no background at all in the intelligence community, and more political operatives than anything. But suffice it to say, there's a whole lot of lawyers over there. We've got them on our side, too.
Yeah.
But our staff is comprised of professional staff members who are, are not attorneys, but are there to help provide guidance in our oversight role and provide support in our oversight role. They've got a couple of those, too, on their side, full disclosure, but they are heavily weighted on the legal side. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm just pointing that fact out. It's interesting to note that we've got an IC whistleblower complaint that is prepared like a legal document. And, yeah, there's a whole lot of lawyers out there. It could be anybody. But the fact that we now know that the complainant in question, the whistleblower in question, was in collaboration or worked in at least in concert with, to some degree, HIPSI staff and even Adam Schiff himself, who denied having any contact with the whistleblower and then later acknowledged the fact that he did. So another lie that he was caught in. Just kind of makes you think, well, heck, there must have been some help there from someone.
Yeah.
And, so, I mean, you can connect the dots any way you want to, but that's out there.
Even the Washington Post, rated, Schiff's statement on that, gave Pinocchios. We're talking with Congressman Rick Crawford. He's on the Intelligence Committee. He's got a lot of knowledge here, a lot of them I'm sure he can't share. I do want to talk a little bit about China, and we can go anywhere we want with this, but, a lot of people are saying with Joe Biden and Hunter Biden in Ukraine, they're like, okay, now do China. And, we know what happened with Joe Biden and Hunter Biden in China. We also have a situation where, we've talked about this. You were on Roby Brock's program, Talk Business and Politics, last couple of weeks, where you said, the Chinese are not coming to Arkansas to help us. They can't be trusted. And then in the news today, Congressman Crawford, or this week, we have the revealing of how influential China has become to the NBA and to Hollywood. And it's really just sickening to see these people sell out American principles because they want that market over in China. What are your thoughts on all of this?
Well, I think the NBA is it's important to note the role that they have in this whole cultural war, is really as much as anything is what's
Welcome. Thanks for starting your Monday with us here. A lot of you are having your first sip of coffee or you're on your way into work. We really appreciate it. Just so you know, we appreciate you spending some time listening to this program. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. We go now to District 100. State Representative Nelda Speaks, the state representative from that district. Nelda, how are you this morning?
I'm great. How about you, Paul?
I'm doing good myself. So listen, I want to have you on because last week I saw a Facebook post about your work down at the Capitol. You guys attempting to do something with an education adequacy contract. I don't even really know what that is, but it sounded interesting. What are your thoughts?
Well, this is something that happened back in 2002 when Governor Huckabee was governor, and Lakeview School District had pressed charges against or filed a lawsuit against him and it became known as the Lakeview bill, and what they were asking for, they did not feel that the schools were being funded adequate, and neither did they think they were being done fair. So when they filed this, then a long procedure through the court, it even went to the Supreme Court, and they came back and they said that I think they wanted us to do it every 10 years, to go through and look and see what were we doing, because it, for all of the schools straight across the board. And the very things they wanted the education committee to start looking at, which is legislators, that all of it was done across the board, and that, the teachers' salaries was comparable to the states around us. Also, that talked about the students, the remedial, going to college, which today we have the same thing, Paul. And, we've got we've got so many children that's going into school, to college, and they're not equipped. They're having to take remedial courses. So when we looked at this, we were presented a contract back in May, and that was from a group out of Denver, which we know as APA, is what that was the initials. But they came to us, and they did not put into this contract anything that we had asked for. They just, and it was like right at $1 million, $944 million. So we rejected that, and so then we said we want more than one contract to look at. So that's what we were doing. But they came back to us with a better contract and answered a lot, that they'd go into the school districts, look at this, see where the weaknesses are, and report back to us, help us get these schools back up to what they should be for the children's sake. And we also had their contract at this time was $650,000, so they wanted to deal with it. And then we had another contract, but the things that most of us was concerned about with that one, there was a group that had gotten together just to do a contract. They've never done any of this kind of work, and they were from over close to northwest Arkansas. They were in Missouri, and they did not have anything in that contract that we were wanting, to look at in the schools to see where their weaknesses are, what's going on in those schools. And so when it came down to a vote, there were, for the APA, it was 11. They separated us out. We do a joint committee. And the legislators, the House, they voted 11, which it passed on our side. But then when it came down to the Senate, they needed 6 votes, and they only had 5. And so that one failed, and we came back and voted on this Schultz. That's what that one was, from over close to northwest Arkansas. And the concerns that we had with that one, because they had not done anything like that.
Did that one pass?
No,
oh, okay.
It failed big time.
Okay.
And they got a lot of donations, and they never really would tell us where these donations was coming from. So you want to go in with a clean slate. I don't want... but anyway, I wound up, when we lost the other one, I voted for them to at least push them to do what we needed, but it failed real big. So now we do not have a contract. There was a group that really out of this, that wanted us to do this and let the teachers that is in this committee be the ones in charge to try to push and work through the Bureau of Legislative Research, which they're not equipped to do that. They can't do that. They can give us all of the information we need, but they'll not be able to go into these classrooms, go into these schools, and see where our weaknesses are. And so now we do not have anything. It's my understanding, after speaking with our the chairman for the House, next month he's hoping to come back and us look at it again, and maybe we can get something passed.
Now, remind us, we're talking with State Representative Nell to speak. So you're saying, though, that this securing this contract to, with somebody to check on the adequacy of our schools, it is mandated by the courts that we do this? Is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So y'all got to find somebody, right?
We're going to have to do something. And Paul, I'm afraid, teachers, they probably know where the weaknesses are. They probably know the schools, but they're not. It's not their place to go in and take all of the heat from these school districts.
Yeah, that's
we
true.
need. To me, we need somebody that has worked with it. My question is, Paul, and I think it is with everybody. What are we doing in Arkansas that other states are not doing? And then what are other states doing that Arkansas is not doing? We need to know the weaknesses and work on them. Yeah. The only way we're going to get children out of poverty is going to be through education. Mm-hmm. You got to educate them out of that.
Yeah.
And that was my whole thing. I just have a real burden in me that we've got such a high rate of students coming out of good schools, but they're still having to take remedial courses.
Yeah. Well, and if you talk to business owners, I mean, gosh, you talk about that remedial, like where you go to college, I would argue that if you're having to take remedial classes when you're in college, maybe you shouldn't be in college. But if you talk to some business owners, they just need people that can, do a little math and can, read and show up to work on time, in a lot of ways. And we're failing at even that. I mean, that's why we kind of have a skilled workforce crisis here in Arkansas.
That is true. And if you speak with, as you said, with these owners of businesses and companies, they can't keep their people coming to work. They don't think they have to come on time.
Yeah.
They think they can take a week off, come back to work. They've not reported in or anything, but their job's still there.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a contractor out there that y'all could contract with, but if there was a contractor made up of Arkansas small business owners and let them come in there and tell you what's wrong with the schools. I mean, I know that's an out-of-the-box idea, but they might be able to, kind of figure out, let the small businesses around there tell the schools, well, this is what we really need. We need them to know these things. If they know these things, we can hire them.
We did go, Meeks, Representative Meeks ran a bill, and I was so thankful to get to sign on to that. And it was just the basics of how to do a checkbook.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And the other thing that kind of burns all of us, you go into a place and they can't give you change without that machine. Mm-hmm. And they can't count it back to you to see if it's correct. They just hand it to you. And that, we have failed so far in just the basics.
Yeah.
And I think I think computers are wonderful, and that's the thing. It's here, but our kids need to know how to do this thing without the computers.
No, you're right. And I was thinking about this the other day. If Google went away, my spelling skills would drop they would just they plummet through the floor. Like I can't spell without Google, I've realized these days, because I don't have to, right? I don't have to memorize words anymore that are hard to spell. You just figure it out, or spell check on Microsoft Word or whatever. And so a lot of times, like, well, I don't really know how to spell this word, but I'll get close, and I'll just let the spell check fix it for me. You know what I mean?
I know we all do that, I think.
But I mean, there are consequences to that. But I do think, I think we definitely have got to do something. I've always thought it was interesting, Nelda. Again, we're talking with State Representative Nelda Speaks, where, you have people talk about workforce training, and I think in theory, workforce training sounds good. But but if you actually think about it, we're talking about people who have already been educated by the same government education program, for 13 years. And so before I fund workforce services for people who are outside of high school, I don't want to give the same amount of money. I'd like to try to fix the program where we're mandating they go to school for 13 years. I want to fix that first before we start funding other programs. That's just my opinion. What do you think about that?
Well, I agree, Paul, and here's my thing. We've tried this program, we've tried another program, and we're still at the bottom. And I hate that phrase, thank God for Mississippi. Well, Mississippi's going to pass us, and we've got to get our act together. But one thing I was thrilled, I visited our technical school here at ASU, which, the kids are coming in from high school, and they are taking all of these technical courses and that, plumbing, electrician, all the different things. And from that, she said, the teacher told me, she said, when they get here, they may miss and they do this. She said, but by the time that we get through with them, they're coming on time, they're there, they're ready to go, they're excited. So maybe through the workforce and these technical schools, that they are beginning to get through to some of these.
Yeah.
But some of this is starting at home.
Yeah.
But other states, Paul, are achieving with the same group of kids that we have. And where are we failing? That's my whole thing. You can't just put it back. Yes, the big part is in the home, but somewhere they have learned, and I don't think it's just pouring more money into it. They've learned how to achieve and work with these parents some way to pull these kids up.
Yeah. State Representative Nelda Speaks, it's always great to talk to you. Thanks for giving us an update about that adequacy contract. We appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate you even asking, Paul, and I hope you have a great day.
I hope you do too, and have a great week as well. So,
you bet.
All righty. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Nelda Speaks, everybody. We're going to make a smaller YouTube video of this. It's always great to talk to Nelda. She's the happiest warrior at the Arkansas State Capitol, right? When I go down to the Marble Palace, I don't like it too much, but she always has a smile on her face and is always really, really happy to tell you what she believes. And can also disagree without being disagreeable too, which is really, really a lost skill. A few of your comments on Facebook. Randy on Facebook: quit dumbing down the kids by teaching them a bunch of lies and useless facts, and start teaching reading, writing, arithmetic, civics, and true history. Then teach them job skills. That's a very good point. I think a lot of people believe that. And you mentioned Nelda, or you heard Nelda there at the very end. She got talking about the home life. That's a problem. Environment is a big deal. I did my homework when I was in school because I knew if I didn't, there were real consequences to pay at home, real ones. There's a discipline factor as well. There's certain levels of authority that kids are either taught at a young age to respect, or they're not taught to respect, and it's difficult, man. I as a father of a 2-year-old right now, man, the boundaries are getting pushed every single day, and it would be, and I have failed. Sometimes it's just easier to not correct this behavior because I don't want to ruin our dinner, But then it's like, no, you got to correct it now, so you don't have to correct it, 10 more times 3 years from now, At least that's what I'm telling myself. I don't know. Half the time I don't know what I'm doing in the first place. I'm just like all of you parents out there as well. Just praying for wisdom from a higher power. Telephone number 870-275-9799 is the telephone number if you want to contribute to the program. Let me know what you guys think out there. I'm telling you, you got a school system out there. We're funding all this taxpayer dollars. We're giving it, literally, we're giving our kids, now not homeschoolers, but most people are giving their kids to the government for 13 years. And we have people coming out and they still can't do what the whole point of education is in the first place. You know what I'm saying? If that's not an indictment, I know you're going to have people fall through the cracks here and there, but it's a lot more than that. Like, we've got a big problem. If that's not an indictment of when the government sets out to do X, they never really achieve what they're trying to achieve. I don't know what is, You have them for 13 years. 13 years. That's a giant chunk of your life. You live till you're about 80, and then it's all downhill from there, right? Anyway, let me know what you think. 870-275-9799. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back with your meme of the day.
Thing Adam Schiff did when he assumed the chairmanship of the Intelligence Committee is staff up with a ton of lawyers. So the HIPSI staff, the House Intelligence Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, or HIPSI as we call it, the HIPSI staff on the Dem side is mostly populated with attorneys. We're dealing with oversight of the intelligence community, and they are populated primarily with attorneys, some coming from an NSC background, others with absolutely no background at all in the intelligence community, and more political operatives than anything. But suffice it to say, there's a whole lot of lawyers over there. We've got them on our side too.
Yeah.
But our staff is comprised of professional staff members who are not attorneys, but are there to help provide guidance in our oversight role and provide support in our oversight role. They've got a couple of those too on their side, full disclosure, but they are heavily weighted on the legal side. Well, I'm just pointing that fact out. It's interesting to note that we've got an IC whistleblower complaint that is prepared like a legal document, and yeah, there's a whole lot of lawyers out there. Could be anybody. But the fact that we now know that the complainant in question, the whistleblower in question, was in collaboration or worked in at least in concert with, to some degree, HIPSI staff and even Adam Schiff himself, who denied having any contact with the whistleblower and then later acknowledged the fact that he did. So another lie that he was caught in. Just kind of makes you think, well, heck, there must have been some help there from someone.
Yeah.
And, so, I mean, you can connect the dots any way you want to, but that's out there.
Even the Washington Post, rated, Schiff's statement on that.
Bob Maloney here with a developing story from ASA News, The Perry. China is coming to Arkansas. We go live to the press conference where the Communist Chinese executive is addressing Arkansans for the first time. Let's listen into the translator.
On behalf of the government of the People's Republic of China, we invite you to come and visit the newest named city in Arkansas, China, Delphia. We are very pleased to own an American city. Our communist government is proud to do business with the mediocre state of Arkansas. We are happy to take your money and your trees and send the profits back home. The Communist government of China was pleased to learn the taxpayers of Arkansas are excited to contribute their money with the hope if you build it, one day jobs will come. We are excited to take your fields of capitalism and turn them into fields of communism, where every Arkansan has nightly dreams of Mao. China is looking forward to our investment of $1 billion in what is now called Arkansas. We see this as an investment in our future, and that future will be called New Beijing. Chinese investment will make Arkansas a great place for jobs as the People's Republic of China will succeed where the Soviets failed. As we build our roots deep in Arkansas, we are thrilled with the potential new ideas and advancement we will share with our people back home. Soon we will have the world's largest runway in the South China Sea, and we thank Arkansas for contributing to our noble cause. In closing, once we make China great again, all of you will see the glory of the revolution of Mao. And Arkansas, whatever you do, please never call the FBI.
Paul Harrell, Parody.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
All right, welcome back. We don't have a lot of time. We're going to go to the phones. Harold from Atkins, you're on Conduit News. How are you this morning? What do you want to make? A point about education in the inner city?
Yes, sir. I'm a conservative Republican from Atkins. I think it's time for conservatives to, this is not going to be politically correct, but it statistically is a fact. I know teachers. They tell me what is occurring within the inner city schools, and it's sad to say, but we cannot throw enough money. The deficit in education is predominantly happening within inner city schools, and that is occurring because predominantly, in my opinion, in the black community, because of the one-parent households and the lack of emphasis on education, and that's evidenced by the fact that the Black Legislative Caucus is the one that's coming forward in the state legislature demanding change. We cannot throw enough money, state funds, at a school district when the families are not directly involved in emphasizing the importance of education and directly involved in the education of their children. When you have children coming into class that are completely disrupting the education environment, and the teachers do not have the authority to get rid of them. But it's sad to say, but the deficit in education in the inner cities is occurring within the black community, and it's happening because of the breakdown of the family. I would be interested to hear what you have to say about this.
Harold,
thank you, Paul.
I appreciate it. Yeah, be safe. Yeah. What you definitely said is politically incorrect. You're not allowed to talk about the breakdown of the American family, but specifically, yes, in the black community. If you do look at those numbers before the Great Society in the '60s versus where we are today, out of wedlock births are what we're really talking about here. And then, of course, you have the welfare policies that set that actually where you make less money if you're married, and you'll make more money if a woman, a single mom, will basically marry the government in a way, and let the government be that male force instead of intact family. Sorry about that. Fired at the wrong channel. Anyway, great points, Harold. I'll leave it there. Here's your meme of the day, by the way. We're going to post this at the Twitter at Conduit News. Here it is. This is courtesy of, what is this? Get red-pilled New York, NY. Okay, this is pretty funny. Speaking of the African-American community, coincidentally, it's a Kanye West meme where you have Tobey Maguire from the first Spider-Man back when that was a hit, and he looks in normal. Normal you can see Kanye West with a Make America Great Again hat. But then he puts on glasses labeled CNN, and it turns into Clayton Bigsby, a la Dave Chappelle, in a white Ku Klux Klan outfit. You'll have to go to the Twitter to see. I'm not describing it the best way I can. Go to @Conduit News on Twitter right now.